on YouTube and soon to be in good old-fashioned podcast format. It's Totally Football Show with an extra edition reacting to the dramatic news coming out of Neon this Friday lunchtime with the draw for the Champions League playoff fixtures. Woo! It's just happened. These are the teams that placed 9th to 24th, you'll recall, in that brief but exciting Champions League phase. Who's with us today? Well, let me first make a speech and then introduce a short video revealing their identity. Or I could just say, here in the studio, James Horncastle, fresh back from Italy.
That's right, James.
Looking forward to hearing about your adventures. Tom Williams is here.
Hello, James.
Love that jacket, Tom.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Seb Stafford-Bloor is in Hamburg, but that hasn't prevented him joining us.
Live and dangerous. Hello.
Woof. And Pol Ballus in Catalonia, Pol?
I am for now.
Excellent. All right, well, the draw has been made for the playoff fixtures. There'll be a subsequent draw in, about a month's time, once these fixtures are played, for us to know which of the two potential opponents they'll be facing should they get through to the last 16.
Never too many draws. Nothing more exciting. Draw, is
No, indeed not.
One of the great things about the new format.
Do you want to say that again, Tom? I feel like your mic wasn't live.
Never have too many draws, can you, James? That's one of the great things about the new format. Even more games means even more draws, means even more edge-of-your-seat excitement.
Let's hear about the playoff draw. Benfica are facing Real Madrid again. It's the one we all wanted. They beat Real Madrid this week. They've also... that's right. They beat Real Madrid this week. Bodo Glimt, who beat Atletico Madrid this week, will get Inter. And the winners of those ties will be facing either Man City or Sporting in the last 16. Monaco have an all-French affair with Paris Saint-Germain. Someone will be telling us a lot about that, including some surprising facts. Qarabag, the first Azerbaijani side to reach the Champions League knockout stages, will be hosting Newcastle. And whoever gets through those two ties will face Chelsea or Barcelona. It's a trip to Istanbul and Galatasaray for Juventus. Memories of 2013 when that fixture last happened. Club Brugge, meanwhile, will be hosting Atletico Madrid, and the winners of those matches will be up against either Spurs or Liverpool. And the final pairings are Dortmund-Atalanta and Olympiacos against Leverkusen, and the two winners of those ties will be up against Arsenal and Bayern. The draw for the rest of the bracket will be coming up after the playoffs on the 27th of February, Tom.
Yeah, no, sorry, I was going to interject, and then I realised that there was no point.
Okay.
So I withdrew my...
Live and unvarnished. I like
Crikey. Should also mention that the Europa League knockout playoff draw is happening even as we speak. So if there's any news from Neon on that, we'll be bringing that to you live. Let's talk about those playoff fixtures in depth, though. Beginning with that Benfica Real Madrid rematch. Assuming you want a little break there, do you? Cool. Okay. Right. Benfica against Real Madrid. It's the one we all wanted. It was the most dramatic match of this season, I would posit. Benfica with that dramatic last gasp headed goal by their keeper Anatoly Trubin in the 98th minute. The latest goal scored anywhere in the Champions League this season, earning them their place in the knockout stages and coming at the expense of Real Madrid, who dropped in the process down into the playoff rounds. And Paul, what's the reaction been like to that in Madrid?
I think that the reaction, especially after the last game of the Champions League league phase, is that Madrid media are a bit more wary about what Benfica are. They have been described as a better team than what their status in the table reflected. And somehow, I think that it is basically the toughest draw of what Madrid could have. That's how they see it. For the fact that it is Mourinho, there's a lot of weight into the narrative that will involve like the tie in all departments. And the fun fact is that it's going to be the first time that Jose Mourinho is back at the Santiago Bernabeu since he left in 2013, if I'm not wrong.
Good Lord. He has had a varied time of it since. he's having a fantastic time in Benfica, and it means more to him in Benfica, as he says. Do we think he has one great triumph left in him, Mourinho?
I mean, I think Jose felt that when he was at Roma on the back of winning the Conference League and reaching a Europa League final. I think he was anticipating that a big club would look at that and think, he's not done after all. He's got one last ride in him. And ultimately, he was then sacked by Roma. But I think Florentino Perez still holds Jose Mourinho in high regard. And I think if he was to beat Alvaro Arbeloa over 3 games, knock Madrid out, I think that would have quite a strong impression on Florentino Perez. And, just as, for example, many people thought Ancelotti was in decline when, he left Real Madrid. Zidane won 3 Champions Leagues in a row. Ancelotti, meanwhile, went to Napoli. There was a mutiny. He left. He then went to Everton, and no one could foresee Carlo Ancelotti going back to Real Madrid. I think the same could happen with Jose Mourinho.
Wow. How delicate is Arbeloa's position with the Madrid fans and indeed with Florentino Perez after what happened in Lisbon?
I don't think that it's quite of a difficult position with Florentino Perez, because Arbeloa and Florentino Perez, they are quite embedded, quite close to each other. But I think that the Bernabeu are going to make their feelings quite evident over in the weekend and in the next games that they play at home. But I think that the consensus around the club and in the fan base mostly is that they have to look at the players. They have to look at the players and potentially to Florentino Perez. I don't think that Arbeloa is going to be one to blame whatever happens this season, unless it goes like even down south. But yeah, I think that Mourinho here has a chance just to put Real Madrid in front of the mirror, like in a bad way. I wouldn't believe that Florentino would be capable of like thinking that Mourinho could be a good option for the future. I mean, that would be just insane, in my opinion. But you never know in this football club, because the state of things is quite dramatic right now.
So it's City or it's Sporting coming through in the last 16 for the winners of that tie. The other tie, who will face either Man City or Sporting, is Bodo Glimt against Inter. James, how do you see Inter getting on the plastic pitch?
Well, look, I mean, I think Inter, their Champions League campaign so far, I mean, it started really well. They won their first 5 games. Then they came up against Atletico, against Liverpool, and against Arsenal. I think, to be honest, the only one where they were outplayed in for parts was the Arsenal game, which they lost at San Siro. Because the Liverpool one ultimately comes down to that Florian Wirtz penalty, the tug by Bastoni. I think some people thought, is this still football? When they saw that challenge. And likewise, Atletico, it's a stoppage time, corner kick. That sees them beaten. But in terms of the teams in the Bodo Glimt category of the Champions League, Inter have shown that they're not just a tier above, but 2 tiers above. Even with Christian Kivu in his first Champions League campaign, they've been able to take care of business on this. The unknown is always, how will they do on the surface at the Arctic Circle? But I'd be quite confident in this. I mean, Bodo have qualified with only 2 wins, and those 2 wins were their last 2 games in the league phase, and they were impressive against Man City and Atletico.
Well, so Inter didn't beat Atletico, but Bodo did.
I see your logic.
Inter didn't beat an English side, but Bodo Glimt did.
Okay. I mean, you're talking this up.
I think make a really good live album.
To talk in Bodo's favour is, I mean, they've been doing this now for 5 years. They've got a real kind of culture of going far in European competitions within the club now. You look back at last year, they were in the Europa League semi-finals, for example. It's now, I think, 5 years since they beat Mourinho's Roma 6-1 at the Arctic Circle. And some of the players who got big moves on the back of those early successes are now back. So in that sense, even though they didn't retain their Eliteserien title, as the Norwegian leagues know, because Viking took it off them, it does seem like when you have won your local championship regularly, like they have over the last few years, purpose comes from elsewhere. I think purpose for them comes from Europe and the Champions League. And certainly, I think I saw estimates that they've maybe made 34 million. It'd probably be more than that for the Champions League this year. So, allows them to keep doing this for years to come. Maybe.
How would that compare to their annual budget generally? 34 million, would you say?
I don't know. I just remember Paolo Di Canio, who's now a pundit, and Paolo played for Lazio. So when Roma lost 6-1, he was like, "Sono salmonari questi, salmonari," which is like they're salmon farmers.
Right. There's a lot of money in salmon.
Yeah, so it is. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much the Bodo salmon farm makes without Champions League or Europa League football, but feels like this is a big.
Right, indeed so. 34 million
in salmon farming. The technological innovations they're going to be able to bring to bear with that kind of money. Yeah. Salmon the size of blue whales.
Tom?
Or those Austin Powers. Was it Austin Powers who had the fish with lasers?
Fish with lasers.
Maybe there'll be that's
salmon
in order to protect that part of the world, which is becoming such a conflict zone.
Salmon with lasers, so they can only be caught by Norwegian fishermen. Because if any other fishermen try to fish them, they use their lasers and they.
Tom, why
just spitballing?
Why don't you tell us instead about the holders, Paris Saint-Germain, and their clash with another Ligue 1 side, Monaco? A surprising fact, perhaps, about Monaco's recent record against Paris Saint-Germain?
Yeah, so Monaco have been on this absolutely dismal run of late. Only one win in their last 9 Ligue 1 games, 7 defeats in that period.
One win, you say?
It was against Paris Saint-Germain.
No.
Back at the end of November. So they have shown that they are capable of raising their game. And it's a fiddly one for PSG because obviously last season they came up against Ligue 1 opposition at this phase of the competition and they put 10 unanswered goals past Brest on aggregate and that, helped to launch them towards victory. But Monaco have got a lot more know-how and a lot more experience of, this kind of fixture. I mean, Monaco's form has been pretty dismal. The last couple of games, I mean, it's kind of, it's not a huge amount to get excited about, but they got a 0-0 draw away at Le Havre at the weekend. They got a 0-0 draw at home to Juve in their final Champions League game. And they played with a sense of organisation and defensive coherence that we haven't seen from them all that recently. And of course, all the pressure will be on PSG.
Right. Did they not also lose 6-1 to Real Madrid this month?
Yes,
that happened as well.
That did also.
But you're right. Pressure very much on Paris Saint-Germain, who, as we discussed in Thursday's show, despite the return of many of their stars, are not firing by any means at the moment, held, of course, to a 1-1 draw by Newcastle at home on Wednesday night.
Yeah, I mean, look to be flying towards automatic qualification for the last 16. 4-0 win over Atalanta in their first Champions League game, which I think even now remains their most convincing performance of the season. Won away at Barcelona with basically certainly a second string attack, if not an entire second string 11. Won 7-2 away to Bayer Leverkusen. It was like, okay, PSG, they're back. This is the PSG we got to know last season. Lost in quite one-sided fashion at home to Bayern Munich, the game in which they lost Achraf Hakimi to injury. Beat Spurs 5-3 in a very kind of like chaotic game and haven't won since. 0-0 away at Atletico Bilbao, a 2-1 defeat at Sporting, and then that very frustrating 1-1 draw at home to Newcastle in their final fixture. And it felt like the planets were aligning for things to click for PSG again. They got over this very difficult first half of the season. A lot of the injured players were coming back. There's no reason why they shouldn't be playing much better football, and they're just not. And a lot of the key attacking players in particular are out of form. One bit of good news that came out of the sort of the outcome of the Newcastle game was Krisha Kvaratskhelia, who went off with an ankle injury quite early on. Turns out that's not serious. It's only a sprain, so he should be back in time for these matches. But there's just this, and I think that the entire narrative around PSG this season has been, are they going to be able to reproduce what they did last season? Are they going to be able to play that kind of football? And if they are, when are they going to start doing it? And that's where we are, just waiting.
Right. And of course, it was around this time last season that they did start doing it, I guess. Maybe even a little bit earlier. If they do get past Monaco, they could be facing Barcelona again. It's either Barcelona or Chelsea in the last 16. Whichever club they don't face will be awaiting the winners of the other tie in that little section, which is Qarabag against Newcastle. Newcastle have a 6,500 mile journey to make to Baku.
Bit of karma, finally, for all the very long journeys they oblige fans of every other English club to make when they travel up to Newcastle. Interesting perspective. Boots on the other foot now.
Monday night to kind of maximise the revenge. Friday.
Qarabag as potential opponents. They did draw 2-2 with Chelsea at home in Baku, or in Baku where they play, earlier on in this campaign. However, their away games against English sides have been, quite remarkable. They've lost all 5 of them with an aggregate score of 19-1, and their last 2 in the Champions League have both ended 6-0 to the English side. That was against Chelsea in 2017 and Liverpool just this month. So there you go. A lot of commentary saying that that's the best draw that Newcastle could have got.
The fact that Newcastle at home as well in the return leg,
right,
is, when you've got a tricky European away trip, it's
right,
nice to have that first.
Get it out of the way.
We know what a formidable arena St James's Park is.
Although the 13,000 mile, can that be right? A round trip to Baku will come in between their away fixtures with the comparatively close Aston Villa and then Manchester City. So they go to Villa, then to Baku, and then to Man City, all within a week. And if they get through all of that, it's either Chelsea or Barcelona. Woof. All right, we'll get on to the other 4 pairings from the playoff round next. And it is already next. Look at that, through the magic of watching this on YouTube. Should I just quickly check if there's been any comments? Here we go. Sorry about this, everybody. Lots of people. Looks like Jimbo isn't checking the comments today, says Take a Fanatic. Difficult in Baku, but we'll finish the job in Newcastle if needs be, says Brigadier Rossa. Let's have a quick look. Dum. Greedy Giles says, I've been listening to the podcast on 1.2 speed for years. It's strange to listen to the guys on normal speed. They sound high. Well, they sound high. There you go.
Greedy Giles just has a lot to get through every day.
I imagine he does.
1.2.
But I take from that the 1.2 speed is actually slower than average speed. Because if we sound high talking at normal speed...
I guess so.
Or unless we sound high because we're just very, very spaced. You're right, Seb.
It slows us down. That would be a remarkable...
Yeah. No, you're right. Clearly, I got that completely right.
Like something that comes up on sort of in high performance culture. Listen to your podcast, but do it at 1.2 speed. To make
Definitely.
Sure
listen to 2 podcasts at once.
Of your day, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. Very good. All right. Thank you for all your comments on YouTube. And on we go. Galatasaray are up against Juventus. James. 2013, Galatasaray and Juventus met in what we used to call a group stage. Ask your parents, kids, of the Champions League. They'd drawn 2-2 in Turin when Juve pitched. Was it Conte in charge back then, 2013?
I mean, this came up this week because when Conte's Napoli went out in the league phase, I think he was the only coach to have gone out in, let's call them, the first phases of the Champions League twice in the last 15 years or whatever. And this was the last time. And it's a very particular game because Galatasaray had just sacked their coach. They brought in a certain Roberto Mancini to be in charge. And Juventus go away there. The game gets abandoned because of a snowstorm. Juventus's hotel is fully booked for the next day. And so when they go back, the receptionist is like, I'm really sorry. You're going to have to find alternative accommodation tonight. They scramble around Istanbul, try and find a place. That's not ideal. And then...
In the meantime, Galatasaray got the tractors out. Is that right? That's the way it was told.
Galatasaray get the tractors out and only plough the end they're attacking. And I mean, just brilliant shenanigans.
So did they pick it up because the game was abandoned halfway in? Did they only play 60 minutes?
Yes. I think they actually played, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Right.
My instinct, it was less than that, but the tractors were out to plough the end Galatasaray were attacking.
Right.
And again, this is one of the essential pieces of context to Antonio Conte's sort of Champions League career. It's a bit of a freak, even if there is a trend of freaks.
There is there not? Will Spalletti fare any better? What do you think? Victor Osimhen, the big name, but so many familiar faces among that Galatasaray lineup.
Yeah, I mean, Spalletti, who made Osimhen into the striker that, won the league with Napoli, and everyone got really excited about. And since he hasn't worked with Spalletti, he's been playing in Istanbul. So I don't want to denigrate Mr. Osimhen because he had a truly fantastic year with Spalletti, and justifiably, a lot of people were looking at him and thinking this is almost like a striker sent from the future. But before Spalletti, he was always quite brittle. He was inconsistent, and it was a surprise, for example, when they had that workaround. Because remember, I think there was some interest from Chelsea at the end of the transfer window, not last summer, but the summer before. And I think Chelsea looked at the price and thought, no. Same with a club from the Saudi Pro League. The European transfer window shut, and he wasn't going to play for Napoli. And so the Turkish transfer window was still open. He went on loan to Galatasaray. And then everyone thought that on the back of his year there, he'd be like, okay, he's had a year in the Turkish Super League, but he's still Victor Osimhen. Let's go out and buy him. And instead, the only club that came in and bought him was Galatasaray. But yes, certainly adds a interesting wrinkle.
Okay. Spalletti could do with a centre forward who he could work that magic on with Juventus, because they, like many of the Italian sides in Europe, have really struggled to score goals. A 0-0 for them with Monaco this week.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that things have obviously really picked up since Spalletti replaced Igor Tudor. I think in terms of when you're judging Champions League performances by Serie A clubs this season, you probably have to take that into account. Atalanta changed Ivan Juric, Juventus changed Tudor, and I mean, I was there at the weekend for what felt like the biggest win of Spalletti's career, 3-0 against his old team, Napoli, where he called the Napoli the ex-champions, which really kind of riled Antonio Conte. In fact, there was a banner when I went to the Stadio Maradona on Wednesday for Napoli's game against Chelsea, which said Spalletti ex-uomo, ex-man, former man, which, was quite harsh. But things have really picked up on Spalletti. I think they would look on this and say it's a good draw. Having said that, pretty sure it was PSV maybe who knocked Juventus out in the same round last year. So, or Feyenoord, I think it was Feyenoord. So not to be underestimated.
Well, indeed not. Indeed not. Were they to go through, the last 16 would see them take on either Spurs or Liverpool, and whichever of those sides they don't face, or whoever comes through that tie doesn't face, will be awaiting the winner of the Club Brugge Atletico Madrid tie. Pol Ballus, back to you. Seb, I'm sure we'll have a German side soon. But for now, let me ask about Club Brugge and Atletico Madrid. What's happening with Atletico Madrid, and how confident, Pol, are you of their chances against these surprising Belgians?
Yeah, no, I think that the reaction is that they are satisfied with the draw. But if you look back, the last time that they faced Brugge was in 2022. In the group stage of the Champions League, they didn't win one single game. And Atletico, the thing with Atletico right now is they are really focused on the transfer window. They are after a midfielder and a striker. It's already last minute. Simeone wants a signing, although Matteo Alemany, he would not want to make a panic buy. So there's a bit of this tension going on in the club. And Atletico, basically, they need to recover Julian Alvarez. Julian Alvarez is in the poorest run of form, possibly since he joined the club. Right now, the biggest threat that they have is Sorloth up front, And yeah, they basically need to beat their players back in shape, sign some new bodies after Conor Gallagher left, and yeah, Simeone wants a new striker as well. And with that, it should be enough for them just to beat Brugge. They see themselves, and in Spain, everyone sees Atletico as the main favourites here. But there's stuff going on inside the club, and let's see how it pans out in the upcoming weeks.
Okay, Atletico Madrid were beaten at home by Bodo Glimt, of course, this week. The final two ties from the playoff round are Dortmund against Atalanta and Olympiacos Leverkusen. Seb Stafford-Bloor, let's hear from you. First of all, Dortmund, beaten at home by Inter this week. What a miserable time they've been having of late.
Beaten at home by Inter this week, beaten the week before by Tottenham, both 2-0. Both really listless displays, Jimbo. Both ends of the pitch, problems. The defensive standard has dropped. We've talked about that before on the podcast. But also Sergio Guirassy, who was so important to their progress through the competition last season and so pivotal in that almost comeback against Barcelona in the knockout rounds. He's vanished as an attacking presence. And without him, and without Karim Adeyemi, whose own form from where it was probably in autumn, it's really vanished. So it could have been worse, definitely, from a Dortmund perspective. Atalanta could also have been facing Gasperini's Atalanta, which would have been considerably worse too. But Dortmund needs some momentum. Dortmund need a little bit of confidence. They need some continuity in selection. They keep losing centre-backs. Vladimir Anton picked up an illness on the morning of the Inter Milan game. Aaron Anselmino was recalled suddenly back to Chelsea, which was disruptive. They need some stability. And this is a really tricky one for them.
Okay. James, what do Atalanta need? They were defeated 1-0 by Union Saint-Gilloise this week.
Which was really disappointing because, for the second year in a row, they had an opportunity to finish top 8, and it felt even more in their hands this time than it did last year, because I think they played Barcelona on the final day in 2025. So it would be 2024. No, it's 2025. But I think from their perspective, it's a manageable draw. I think that Palladino's done quite well in terms of certainly domestically has got this team firing and scoring the goals that you'd expect an Atalanta side to have scored under Gasperini, which was not the case with Ivan Juric. They drew too many games. They weren't scoring. They until these last two games against Union Saint-Gilloise and Athletic Club de Bilbao, it seemed that Palladino was quite suited. His style play was quite suited to playing in Europe. But now there are some doubts. However, having said all of that, I think they would quite fancy themselves still against this iteration of Dortmund. I think it's a very delicately poised tie, James.
Could go either way. Whoever does get through will draw either Arsenal or Bayern Munich, Seb, in the last 16. Crikey. Either Arsenal or Bayern Munich. If Bayern don't get Dortmund from that and go to the winner of the other game, then they could be up against Leverkusen, because the other tie is Olympiacos against Leverkusen. Remarkable, really strong probability of an all-German tie in the last 16. Leverkusen's chances away at Olympiacos, and indeed at home to Olympiacos, Seb.
Well, Leverkusen lost to Olympiacos on the penultimate match day of the group stage, and in a way it was kind of their season in a nutshell. They played quite well. They created quite a few good chances, didn't take them, and then they've been brittle all season without the ball. Cost them. They lost 2-0. And I think this is the issue. When in the Bundesliga, I think you can get away with the kind of the growth stage that Leverkusen have entered into, which is to replace high-performing first-teamers with talent for the future, talent that can grow over the next 2 or 3 years, wholly new defensive parts. Unfortunately, in Europe, the standard is higher for German teams. And so what you've seen, Leverkusen at their worst, when they come across clinical opposition, best example, of course, being PSG when they won 7-2 at the Bayer Arena, and in a game which was actually hard to watch at times. This match was so great. They can be found wanting.
And at the moment, there's nothing currently in Leverkusen's form which suggests that this is a particularly easy tie. Also, they, I think one of the big issues is going back to the beginning of the season. So Iman Ross, when he was plotting his way through this kind of this revival, pinned his hopes on a couple of really, really high profile, high cost individual. Oh, you're waving me off.
No, I was saying something to Paul. Continue, Seb.
Okay, I'm sorry. He kind of pinned his hopes on Balde, Jarrell Quansah, that they would come in and replicate the kind of stability offered by, for instance, Jonathan Tah, who left for Bayern Munich. Hasn't worked out that way. And the defense is a big weakness, which means that as a result, you can't depend upon it while these attacking components grow and develop at the other end of the pitch. So Europe has been extremely difficult for them. And had it not been for that 3-0 win against Villarreal, they wouldn't have qualified. They would have been in that mix with Benfica, with Marseille, with Union Saint-Gilloise, and they could well have just been eliminated.
There you go. Well, as it stands, Olympiacos Leverkusen will see one of those teams taking on Arsenal or Bayern. If it was Arsenal, that would be the 14th time in the last 17 seasons that the two teams had faced off or face off. But anyway, those are the games. When are they taking place? In about a month. Tom, do you have the exact date to hand?
February 17th and 18th.
Yes.
With second legs to follow the following midweek.
24th and 25th. And then we get the draw for which sides they'll all be paired up with in the last 16. We're going to take another very quick break, and then we'll get a few final thoughts on the teams that are in the remaining stages of the Champions League, and one team in particular that's not.
Bit of phone signal.
Bit of phone signal.
Also messaged the Europa League draws for Celtic and Forest.
Oh, have you messaged it where? Oh, you have, haven't you? Oh, Europa League draw update. Nottingham Forest have drawn Fenerbahce.
Tasty.
And Celtic have got Stuttgart. Seb, Celtic have got Stuttgart.
Interesting times. That's a difficult tie for Celtic. Stuttgart are playing well at the moment, and so one of the loudest grounds in Germany. So that's a tricky old game when they go there.
Right. Lots of people commenting on YouTube. Santiago says, "Watch out for Bodo against Inter. That's where this year's shock will come." Madotra says, "Real Madrid right now. Ah, shit. Here we go again." Okay. Will Mopton, Benfica against Real.
The big analysis.
Like Real Madrid Benfica is the game that everyone wants to see.
Yes.
I don't want to see it again.
What?
I like the fact that because it's happened.
Yes.
You do very, very well to better it. I don't want to give Real Madrid a two-legged chance to kind of right the wrong. There should be more trophy. It's over. You've conceded the 98th minute goal to a goalkeeper and a Jose Mourinho side.
But like, given what we had, that's the best we could get.
Yeah, but it feels like it's kind of, if you gave Florentino Perez the opportunity to schedule this himself, that's the game that he would.
I don't know, Seb. I don't know. I wasn't watching all of the game, but those who were feel that this was in no way a freak result and that Benfica were far the better side. They could have won it by a much bigger margin much earlier on in the game. Would that be fair, Paul?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if Real Madrid's goalkeeper had another name besides Thibaut Courtois, Real Madrid would have lost 5-2, 6-2, easily. Let's see.
No, did not feel like there was kind of like a mentality issue that Real carried into that game, which, given what it will follow, which is huge punitive criticism in the Spanish media, probably booed by their own fans, it'll come out and I don't want it. And I'm going to die on this hill. I'm fine.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's going to happen, Seb.
It's okay.
Also writing in on our YouTube channel is Anish Kumar, who says a lot of pundits are saying Barcelona will lose once the competition goes into the knockout round due to their unpredictability. Not sure who those pundits are, but anyway.
I said this. No, I haven't. I've made this argument.
Oh, have you?
No, not on the case of the unpredictability, but on the case that
they can't defend.
Yeah, they can't defend whenever they play. I mean, it's led to some incredibly entertaining games, but I've also, seen people online sort of say, Inter only got to the Champions League final because, Barcelona's high line and, kind of crazy antics. And, it's only Lamine Yamal who basically keeps them in these crazy games. So, ultimately the test for Hansi Flick in this year of his time at Barcelona will be to show that those things have been corrected. But we've already seen in the league phase, Pol has no doubt been present. Games like the Brugge game.
The Brugge game.
They're just like, yeah, Brugge, if you want to score, fine. 3 goals, go for it.
Yeah.
11 years Pol since Barcelona won the Champions League.
I think it's been four games in the Champions League league phase that Barcelona started the game losing. So it's a bit of an indictment of like how vulnerable in a way. I don't think that they've fixed a lot from last season. What I do think is that they can put up a fight against any team. And that's the good and the bad thing that Barcelona have, because they can have a fight against the likes of PSG or Bayern Munich, but they can have a problem against the likes of Brugge or like Slavia Prague, which gave them trouble. I struggle to see Barcelona as a Champions League contenders at this point. I don't think that with the defensive line that they have, if you look name by name, I struggle to see it as a Champions League winning backline. But again, I mean, at the end of the day, it's gonna go down on Pedri, Rafinha, and Lamine Yamal. If you have those 3 guys on point, they are like world class and possibly best in the world in their position. So let's see what happens.
Anish Kumar's suggestion in his post was that this might mean, or this maybe will mean, that this is a year for an English side. And were it to be, Tom, you already put your money on Chelsea, one of the 5 English sides, already through to the last 16. The other Premier League team, I think Newcastle picked up an easy draw.
I'm not money on a Chelsea. I remarked upon the echoes of Chelsea's 2011-12 campaign when they changed managers halfway through, brought in someone kind of unproven, won a crucial fixture against Napoli on the way to glory in Munich. That was the extent of the observation.
Book your flight to Budapest, Chelsea fans. Sorry, Seb.
It sounds an awful lot like money being placed on Chelsea to me.
Yeah.
Tom's telling me about.
Absolutely. What about, Seb, your Spurs? Could they win a European trophy for a second season in a row?
Name on the trophy, absolutely, because it would just be the most Tottenham thing that could possibly happen. Get relegated from the Premier League, win the Champions League. Why not?
Why not, indeed?
Also, I mean, last year, and it's 1 of 1. It's hardly a sample size to extrapolate trends from. But the teams that finished in the top 4, only one didn't make the final 4, and that was Liverpool, who obviously topped the league phase, and PSG knocked them out. But some people read a lot into that. They're like, okay, the league phase clearly does show who the best 4 teams are. And Spurs were 4th. So, clearly Spurs are the 4th best team in Europe right now. They're just a little bit like Liverpool, for example. They've recruited and decided to play European football and not English football.
And it's working in Europe.
Who'd have thought? I was watching the draw, and UEFA described the group stage as one of the great group stages in the competition's history, which would make this Tottenham one of the great teams in footballing history, by my measure. In that context, can't deny that.
You certainly can't. Now, not making it out of the group stage were Napoli, as James mentioned, after that defeat at home to Chelsea, and Marseille, who famously had been congratulated by their opposition, Club Brugge, on Wednesday on the scoreboard, returned to their dressing room where they were patting themselves on the back on a 3-0 defeat, but successfully make it to the playoff round when the news came of Trubin's goal for Benfica against Real Madrid. What's the reaction been in Marseille, and has it resulted in Roberto De Zerbi doing one?
Not yet, but I mean, Marseille going out at this phase of the competition and in those circumstances is a catastrophe for Marseille, because everything has been about turning them back into a Champions League club. They got back into the Champions League last season. They celebrated that success, very joyously. And, there were indications in the league phase that they were capable of competing. They were absolutely fantastic in their opening game against Real Madrid at the Bernabeu. Ended up losing to a couple of penalties. They thrashed Ajax at the Velodrome, won at home to Newcastle, picked up a really handy win away to Union Saint-Gilloise. So they've shown that they're good enough to compete at this level. And they go into that final game away to Club Brugge with their destiny in their own hands, and just produce one of their worst performances of the season. De Zerbi inevitably is in the spotlight. There was a big sort of post-mortem in L'Équipe this morning, kind of picking apart some of his decisions. Marseille have played 30 matches this season in all competitions, and he has changed the team between every single game. And just curious decisions. Timothy Weah has spent most of the campaign playing on the right, either as a right wing back or occasionally as a right winger, and he was on the left in Bruges for kind of the first time in like about 3 months.
His preferred position, by the way.
On the left,
yeah.
I wonder actually whether he didn't start on the left against Madrid. But I mean, the feeling is, why is he kind of moving things around just like constantly?
Timothy,
is it
where?
Well, indeed, is it changes for the sake of changes? There was a report last night on the Foot Mercato website, generally quite reliable, that De Zerbi had offered to resign. He subsequently denied that.
He didn't take training on.
Yes,
Didn't take training, but occasionally he doesn't take training,
Right.
and it was basically a warm down session.
Okay.
And they're actually now at Clairefontaine, and that's not just to avoid flying into Marseille and having to face the hordes of angry fans at the airport. They're playing Paris FC at the weekend. And De Zerbi quite likes these mini retiros. Did it a couple of times last season
In Rome, famously.
in Rome
Yeah.
at the end of the season. And they're kind of, this was organised pre-disastrous Champions League qualification. But here we have again Marseille battening down the hatches. They've recruited a huge amount in recent years. They've spent an awful lot of money. They've signed a lot of kind of Champions League level players. And suddenly they're out of the Champions League, before the end of January. So, yeah, joked about this on yesterday's show, but Marseille is not the kind of place where this kind of result is taken lying down. There will be just chaos in the weeks and months to come. And I, for one, can't wait to witness it all.
Crikey, Seb.
Tom, are there going to be any financial consequences? Because that's a big old wage bill in Marseille. And obviously they've missed out on quite a chunk of revenue by not going through.
Yeah, massively. I mean, as for any team that misses out on getting through to the knockout phase, there are ramifications. Even just the difference between finishing. There's the one thing of being eliminated, but every single place in the table, brings in more money. If they'd finished, if they'd qualified and finished multiple places higher, that is a significant payout. And another feature of Marseille's recent existence is that they're just constantly buying and selling players. And I think that's partly because they have a president in Pablo Longoria, who is a former sporting director, a sporting director, Mehdi Benassia, who loves moving players around. And, players come in, play really well, seem like they're about to kind of really kick on. And the next thing, they're just out of the squad for no reason whatsoever. And they're being bad-mouthed by, OM sources in the media. And then the next transfer window, they've been sold. Angel Gomez, former Manchester United star, arrived last summer, having played really well at Lille, barely got any opportunities at the start of the season, and has since just disappeared. And they are desperately trying to sell him between now and the end of the window. Arthur Vermeeren, young Belgian midfielder, also came in last summer, produced some fantastic performances in the Champions League. He's now been binned off and frozen out. And just this constant churn. And I think part of that is a reflection of the fact that when Marseille have an opportunity to make some money, they find it very difficult to turn it down. You put in a sizable bid for one of their players and they will just generally accept it. So the loss of Champions League income will hit them pretty hard.
Well, greedy Gilles, who previously posted that he listens to the podcast on 1.2 speed, so we currently sound like we're high to him.
Sure, he's about half an hour back in the episode.
Yeah. No, he's way ahead. We haven't even got to the point of the podcast that he's
finishing podcast.
He's already finished. Yeah.
Halfway through his lunch.
Yeah. But he points out, he suggests that Marseille have sold 2 players today. Breaking news, if that's true.
I mean, there we go.
It was very strange. I mean, go back to one of the stories from the start of the season was the bus stop between Adrien Rabiot and Jonathan Rowe, both of whom were sold. Rabiot to Milan, Jonathan Rowe to Bologna. And, it struck me that if you're getting rid of one, why are you getting rid of both? Particularly, De Zerbi never wastes an interview to talk about, his his son Rabiot, his number 10 Rabiot, who's having a fantastic season.
Is it a Beckham's son, Harish? I don't know. I don't know.
Wait, you're saying one of the Marseille board danced on?
Oh, I didn't. Do you know what? I'm not read beyond the headline.
Oh, come on,
James.
What was the dancing thing?
You don't even know about the dancing.
It's the main bit from the Brooklyn Beckham.
You shouldn't have committed to that.
Have we got time for this now?
The allegation.
Who danced on what?
Do you want to guess, or should we just tell you?
So, Brooklyn dance? No.
The allegation
Yes.
that Victoria Beckham,
Yes.
Brooklyn Beckham's mum,
Right.
danced on him
On him?
in inappropriate fashion
What?
on his wedding day.
I'm in.
I can't believe you've referenced this because you're across the cultural zeitgeist, but you didn't actually read the posts, which
I felt it was their business. And I realized that me bringing it up on a football vodcast is a little bit contrary to that, in many ways. Highly commendable position. So I'm just going to move on. Thanks for that, though, James. Thank you for that. Who's going to win the Champions League? Who's going to go all the way?
Greedy
James?
trials.
Inter?
Well, I mean, Inter have got to improve in the big games. That's been in true of all but a couple of their Serie A games, and it's been true of their Champions League games with all those caveats that I've just said when we talked about Inter. So I'm a little bit less confident than I have been in other years about them. Arsenal have clearly shown that they are just so solid, just conceding 4 goals in 8 games, winning all of those 8 games. The one question mark I have about them is, can they go all the way in both the Premier League and Champions League, or will one detract from the other? We've seen how, even though people have been quick to proclaim them champions-elect in England, the gap is still only 4 points. And how that club, that fan base, these players react to that expectation, that pressure of the next month is I think, an unknown still. I mean, I would still say talent-wise, I'd still look at the champions, PSG.
You would, yeah.
But the big thing about PSG last year was they made a transformational signing in January, which was Kavisha Kvaratskhelia, which hasn't happened. And I wonder if how long are we still going to be saying PSG will figure it out and they'll all of a sudden come alive? Because I think we've kept using that to justify some of the results that have been below the expectations they set at the end of last year.
Right. Tom, would you agree, disagree?
Yeah, no.
Who would you have as your favourites?
I mean, I would kind of like to see PSG recapture some of what they did last season. And not only because I'm a freelance journalist who specialises in French football and therefore that is beneficial to me, but because it was really exciting in purely sporting terms. The kind of football they were capable of playing was really dazzling, and it would be nice to see them turn up at some point. Bayern, super impressive. I mean, an attack to die for. Really impressive when they beat PSG at the Parc des Princes. And Madrid, you can't ever.
You can never.
Just when you're kind of in one of those seasons where you're not
do that.
entirely sure. Oh, it's not going to be Madrid because they're all over the place.
Don't even look at it. Seb, Bayern.
I think you add Musiala and Davis fully fit into that Bayern side. I think you could have something really special. And the one thing about PSG, I kind of agree with the guys, but the difference being the goalkeeper. I think if you look at the run to the final last year and how important Donnarumma was to it, please correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but I haven't seen enough really from Chevalier yet to suggest that he's capable of the same kind of impact.
Yeah, well, he lost his place for the vital game against Newcastle to Matvei Safonov. This sort of lumbering Russian understudy who now looks like he might be on the verge of becoming PSG's first choice goalkeeper. And again, a problem kind of all of PSG's own making. I'm sure there was a way that Donnarumma could have been persuaded to stay.
Right.
That he was super popular in the changing room.
Or that Luis Enrique could have been persuaded to keep
it.
Santiago-EH2TS, which I feel is important, says fixture congestion will pile up. Thus, my money is on Bayern to win it. PSG could turn good. The leagues with 18 teams will benefit, I think.
look at the Bodo Glimt example. 6 weeks off, and suddenly they're just beating teams left, right, and centre.
How many teams in their division? Coming to you on this one, James?
I cannot remember off the top of my head how many teams are in the Elitserien,
Right.
which I'm saying purely to sort of make it look like I follow the Norwegian league.
16.
16.
16.
Okay,
Where
so
do you get them from? But anyway,
Tom is backing Bodo.
so far we got a shout for Arsenal. We got a wishful wish for Paris Saint-Germain. We've got a Bayern Munich and Pol Ballus. What's your feeling?
Yeah, like my principles, I'm not a huge advocate on like predicting back-to-back champions. So I'm not going to go for PSG here. And I'm going to go for Bayern, basically. I think just adding up to what Seb said, just you put Musiala into that mix. And yeah, that's potentially the best front line in Europe. How they played against PSG was amazing. And I don't see Arsenal coping like with both title quests at the very top of it. Then in La Liga, I don't see any. Maybe Barcelona, of course, are the best team, but Flick, I think that Flick likes the sort of title of being an underdog, because after the last game, he said, no, the Premier League is the best league in the world. We are trying to compete with that, and we try to win the Champions League, but the Premier League is the best league in the world. And I think that Barca will try to go that route. So let's see what happens. But I think Bayern.
Okay.
We haven't mentioned City,
No, that's true. We haven't.
which I know people still think about the 5-1 defeat in the Arctic Circle to Tom's pick, Bodo. But what I find interesting about the teams that we've just spoken about, with the exception of PSG and Luis Enrique, is like Arteta and company are still, part of this sort of new generation of coaches. Okay, Arteta's been at Arsenal for a long time now, but I don't want to do this, but like, what's he won? He's won an FA Cup. And while we've seen progress in the Champions League, quarterfinal, semi-final, it feels like we're trending towards a final. I still have that doubt. Same with company. As good as Bayern have been and have shown that they've kind of learnt in how to complete the team that was incomplete last year, how company, for example, has done better in some of the bigger games in the Champions League. Paul mentioned the one against Paris Saint-Germain. That's still a doubt for me. Whereas Pep, Pep is still Pep. And, I would, if there was to be an encounter between a City and one of those teams, I still think the experience of that coach might make the difference, regardless of the flaws in that City team and them not being as good. Paul's shaking his head, even though he's Mr. Catalan, Mr. Pep, who you used to live in Manchester to follow Pep's every move.
Yeah.
He's shaking his head.
I'm not that sure. I don't see them as a stable team. And to an extent, I think that not having won in recent years is a good thing for a team. I think that right now, I don't see like any team really much better than any other team. So the fact of having this desire of wanting to win, I think it gives you an edge. I'm not saying that City, they don't want to win. Of course they do. But I don't see them as a consistent team. Maybe like in a month's time, they have Mark Guehi and Semenyo into the Champions League squad. They don't have many more injuries and things have changed. But I don't see reasons now to believe that Man City is among that group.
You can't trust them at the moment. I don't feel like you can trust this City performance, because usually in years gone by, they develop this mechanical quality at this time of year that they just start slowly moving forward and have this momentum. Whereas this season, every now and again, every 3 weeks, there seems to be something which causes them to question the kind of the structure of that squad as well.
I just find it interesting how recently the teams that have won the Champions League have had coaches who've won it before.
That's true. That is
And so I think the mix is interesting this year because, as much as Tom said you can't rule out Real Madrid, it's hard to really take them seriously with Arbeloa in this interim post. Flick's won it before, Paul, even though Barca have clear flaws. So what we're all saying is it's very open.
It is very open. It is very open. It's going to get a little bit less open in about 3 weeks' time when we get the playoff results and we know who's going to be facing who in the last 16. Don't know if we'll be doing a podcast live around the draw for that last 16. I wouldn't rule it out, though, because this has been a lot of fun. Hopefully for you as well. Yeah. Seb?
Oh, it's been exhilarating. I'd hope that we'd do another live one.
Let's see.
Solving technical issues on the fly.
Yes.
It's been fun.
Absolutely. I hope you've enjoyed it as well, viewer on YouTube, or indeed podcast listener. That's where we'll, I think, park it for now. So many, many thanks to Seb in, I believe it's still snowy Hamburg, in Pol Ballus in a considerably more temperate Catalonia.
Yeah.
James in a clearly frosty studio here in London, and Tom, and of course in the booth, Liam, and producer Charlie. We'll be back on Sunday evening if you fancy a bit of live podcasting on our YouTube channel from around about 7:15 or thereafter, rounding up Matchday 24 in the Premier League, and of course that'll be available as a podcast on Monday morning. Many, many thanks to everybody who wrote in. For now, from all of us here, it's goodbye. The Totally Football Show podcast is available 3 times a week, bringing you all the football news you could reasonably be expected to care about. We've got views, we've got stats, we've got analysis, we've got some of the best football writers around, and the whole thing is absolutely free. So have a listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all the usual places by clicking on the link below.